we're here today with John Lee. Today we're hosting with on our Better Listen fan page, and worked with John Lee for a number of years, and excited to do this, our first Facebook Live. And let me make sure that's all good. Hold on. Yeah, we're all good. And John mentioned to me a couple of minutes ago that he had a post on Facebook that struck a chord. And I believe it's about the topic of men and emotional intelligence. Is that more or less what we're talking about?
Right. Yeah, we got a lot of hits on that because still there's a lot of women and men trying to grapple with this question of how are men going to be now in light of the Me Too movements, and which is really great. But women are saying to me, I'm not sure what my husband or my son, how they're going to relate to this, and they're not even sure themselves. And so I did a post talking about that. And one of the things I said, Steve, is that one of the doorways to true and deep masculinity is through grief work. This was something that Robert Bly talked about back in the 80s and 90s. And I've been talking about it since then too. But most people, men and women, will say, but John, I don't know how to start grieving, or I'm not sure what grief really is. And so a lot of my work over the years has been trying to explain that, along with the differences between anger and rage, which is another component of being emotionally intelligent.
So when you say grief work, what does that mean?
Well, it means, taking time to mourn the losses, transitions, and changes that happen in our lives, really sometimes weekly, monthly, certainly yearly. Things change, we lose people, we move from a city, our kids go off to school or college, that our life is filled with transition, change, and loss. And that must be felt, discussed, talked about, released, written about. But again, our culture is not big on grieving. We've been told since we were kids that grief, which was real and genuine, would be labeled self-pity, and that nobody wants to see self-pity. So everybody pretty much has their grief choked down and stuffed. And part of the men's work, as in recovery work, is to bring that stuff back up and out and get some release and some reconciliation.
So, so what did you write about in your article that struck a chord? Is like how to do this? And
the big part was that men, in this last post on my blog and on Facebook, was about men needing to grieve much more, and that women support a man to go into his grief. Men support their sons and daughters, that it's not a bad thing. Actually, if one grieves, you actually get energy, you actually feel better. And women have been telling each other this for a long time. They'll say something to each other like, when's the last time you had a good cry? And that means that you got to something very deep, you connected with it, and you released it, in a profound way. And what women have told us for all these hundreds of years is that they feel better. Well, studies absolutely show that when a man grieves and weeps and cries, his testosterone rises. So what that research has proven is that even for men to have a good cry, they start talking like this because their testosterone is going up.
Okay, so it's one thing that I love, and this is I realize it's a way to not talk about grief, but I love the science of all this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the biology actually changes, and that whole thing that it takes a lot more muscles to frown than it does to smile. But here I am avoiding grief, talking about smiling and science.
Right.
I mean,
and that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants a smiley, happy person. And the truth is, the weird thing about this truth is the more you release these pent-up emotions, the happier and more joyful you are. See, it's the repressed emotions. And when you repress emotions, you're using your sort of allotted daily available energy not to be happy or to be engaged, but to hold these feelings down. And so most of what we got taught as kids is 180 degrees opposite. Another study showed that men who are real high in testosterone, when they grieve and weep, their testosterone goes down. So grieving is like a physiological, biochemical attempt to balance you out. And God knows one thing we need in this culture right now is balancing out. We need to be grieving about all the things that this country is losing and how that's going to affect children, how it's going to affect welfare services. There's a lot of loss and change and transition that has not been felt and talked about and released. Most people just bottle it up, swallow, and stew in their own juices.
And now there's change. There's change technologically. I mean, what we went through to get to try to do our first Facebook Live, it's amazing that, I think it's working.
Yeah, it's funny that we're doing it live because we tried so hard to get it going, I almost died.
No, but
then you could have done Facebook dying.
Facebook dead. That'd be boring.
Facebook Live, it'd be Facebook dying. And people say, well, now that would be something to check in on and see this public speaker die right on Facebook because he's so frustrated with technology.
No, but the rate of change of technology, what's happening in with the government and everything, there's different levels of stress. Right. So in your post, I think you mentioned something about, I didn't read the post. I read a lot of your posts, but I think it was just in the last day or two. And it had to do with the Me Too movement.
Yeah, that's what I say, that men are not on solid ground, sure-footed about what to say, how to be, how to act, what to eliminate, what to start implementing. And women are confused about it too. We've come to a watershed moment in masculinity. It's time to let the old teachings about what it is to be male and masculine to die. And I'm going back to that because that's death is a transition and a change that needs to be mourned. And then through a lot of conscious introspection, communication, we try to create a new masculinity, a new way of being male, but without giving up the good things that we did get from our past and from history. So it's a weird balancing act. How do we become new men, new males? How do we relate to women in a much different, kinder, more passionate way? And the answer is right now, we're not sure. We don't know. And that's part of what the post was about, is we're not sure, we don't know, but we've got to do something. And that's part of what the post was about, is we're not sure, we don't know, but we've got to do something different.
I think it's also interesting, we were talking about science, the way that biology, so much of it is hardwired. You know, so we've been existing, I don't know the numbers, but thousands and tens of thousands of years as we...
250,000 years.
What was that?
250,000.
As we
primates appeared 250,000 years ago.
Great. So as we evolved, you know, it's almost like a different operating system.
Yeah.
Like for us to do what we're doing now, a year ago, could have been done, would be crazy expensive. 5 years ago, companies were spending millions of dollars to try to figure it out. Now, for a few bucks, it seems to be working.
Right.
But I think that analogy holds true in that our bodies are working on an operating system.
Yep.
You know, we're in the cave. There's a tiger. Club the bastard.
Yeah.
You know, we got to, you know, save our family. So things are evolving so much quicker, but over 250,000 years, we're on an operating system of a caveman, so to speak, and a cave woman. It's not, you know, and I think it's men kind of get a bad rap to a certain extent, that women, there's so much biology baked into it that everyone is just grasping for the way, well, how do you deal with this old operating system in a new world that's appropriate and loving, and it's hard for a man because a man has to go out and fight and, you know, kill the dragon.
Not so much. That's why we're having so much trouble. There are no lions and tigers and bears at the cave, and yet we're still running on that system. So it's kind of like what, I don't usually use technology as an example, but everything that we're doing right now with the most current technology still has its origins in the old technology. So it didn't go away. Everything that those people started in the 40s and 50s is still the foundation work for what we're doing here on Facebook. Well, that's the same thing with human beings, that we've got the old. Now, how do we bring the old into the new and keep evolving based on no tigers, no bears at the cave door, and the fact, now this is a key here, and the fact that women are not going to be subservient any longer. They're going to demand and should have keep demanding equal pay, equal rights, and as an organism, we're going to develop and evolve. But if we don't grieve the losses and grieve the changes and grieve the transitions, we'll tend to bring more of that old into this new dynamic.